Welcome to part 4 of the corruption in the Nevada judicial system and how it's forced me to go through 4 years of litigation over a marriage that only lasted 60 days. And they're doing this to conceal mortgage fraud. And I'm sharing this because I want to leave a record of what's happened to me and how freely they break the law and how openly it's done now. And these are incredible social injustices. And the more I study about what is going on and who to report this to and who to get help from, the more I see that I'm not the only one. And there's a large number of African American women who are being abused in the court system. And with my case, it's very clear and cut and dry. So it's very hard for me to understand how they can continue to do this. And I'm hoping through sharing my story that I inspire somebody else to keep fighting and to keep going. And, for me, I want peace. I want to heal and move on from the trauma that I've experienced, not just with this 4 years of litigation. It started right after the loss of my son. So to have that kind of stress put on you all at the same time and be completely innocent in the situation, it's very hurtful. And I pray that somebody out there with a larger voice than me sees how insane that this situation is, and they stand with me to make something change, because I would hate to see anybody else go through what I've gone through. But even going through, social media and finding other families that have gone through the judicial corruption and the abuse of the legal system, I've seen other stories where they're legally medically kidnapping children. And, I think about everything that I've gone through and still going through, and I could not imagine somebody taking Aiden from me. And I know he's out there somewhere, and I couldn't get to him. And this is happening a lot all over social media. And my heart breaks for them even more now, because I'm a victim of the same legal system. And it's not a child they're taking away from me, but it's my freedom they're taking away from me. It's my property they're taking away from me. And it's my son's legacy that they're trying to destroy to protect people who are criminals, who should have been put in jail 4 years ago when I reported this. So I'm hoping that, everybody says, well, you keep talking about this and you keep talking about this. This is a humongous injustice in our system. And the abuse that I've suffered during the last 4 years is unspeakable. And if me sharing my story and me being vulnerable changes anything or helps somebody else not experience this, or maybe before hiring lawyers gets them to do their own research so you know what your lawyers are supposed to be doing, well, then it's worth it. It's worth me sharing. And so now I am on part 4, and part 4 is when I file quiet title. So if you watched part 3, I talked about the real estate agent case handled by Mary Kay Holthus and the notary case being handled by Elizabeth Gonzalez. And both of those cases were being handled by my attorneys, Janice and Fulton, as well as my divorce. So just the fact that they were on all 3 cases is legal malpractice. The fact that they made claims in the real estate agent case that are filed pleaded claims, and the same thing in the notary case, and then went to the divorce hearing and brought none of it, is a clear sign of legal malpractice. So after filing maybe 20 motions into the real estate agent's case, clearly writing everything out and having an exhibit for everything that I said, that they uttered a fraudulent deed to be true. And they did this for years. The judge, Mary Kay Holthus, refused to amend it and wanted to just dismiss it. And then there was Elizabeth Gonzalez, and she didn't even want to hear anything. She said by preclusion that the notary didn't do anything and I was supposed to take a $5,000 settlement, which I never agreed to. And later on found out that they illegally filed it with the IRS. So I sent multiple complaints to IRS showing them about everything that was happening. And to this day, I've had no response from the IRS. So once I realized that it didn't matter what I was filing into these two judges, they weren't going to follow the law. And I realized then they picked these judges. So I then filed a separate case for quiet title. And on this separate case for quiet title, I listed everybody, the police department, both lawyers, both law firms, the notary's law firm, everybody. Ingrid Trujillo, Daryl McCloskey, Bobby Antee, Linda Naw, ERA Brokers, Valley West Mortgage, Melissa Parker, One Realty Group. So everybody was on there. And then I made the proper causes of actions, all the crimes on my property. So when I filed that, I then had to pay to serve every single person on the complaint. So I did it. So once everybody was served, they all began to answer in and say, just dismiss, just dismiss. She has no evidence. Raina Hughes already heard this. Everybody already heard this. She has no evidence. So the police department is on this. So they're hearing all of this. And then I decide I'm going to file a motion to enforce these notary bonds because I've lost a lot over the last couple of years litigating over a deed that wasn't valid. So this should be simple. So I file a motion, and it's Judge Rob Bear. In the motion, I show him there's two notaries. One is Nikki Bott and one is Melanie Traynor. Nikki Bott was also the escrow agent, clear fraud. And she did not turn in her journal, so she didn't produce my signature. And here goes information from Bobby Antee that I didn't even show up there. And then here's the second notary who fraudulently conveyed title into his name. And guess what? They're next door neighbors. So this was the easiest motion to file. Well, I get a court date for November 17th. And I'm waiting and waiting for the court date as it gets closer. Well, before it gets closer, the notary, her lawyer from Lips and Nelson, Angela Ochoa, sends me an email. And she tells me, you need to take that complaint back. Elizabeth Gonzalez already ruled on all of this. So I tell her, you're insane. Elizabeth Gonzalez didn't rule on anything. She dismissed it and she's concealing it. It's fraud. So I then tell her I'm going to go forward with the complaint. Judge Rob Bear will be honest and he's going to hold you guys all accountable for this. So at that time, Bobby Antee is still being represented by Grayson Moulton from Shumway Van, and Linda Naw is being represented by Garrett Chase from Shumway Van. So in the first call to the real estate agent case, Michael Van, the owner of Shumway Van, gets on the phone and he tells Mary Kay Holtis, Lindsay's been living in the house. She's enjoying the house, and she signed the quitclaim deed. So Michael Van, the owner of the law firm, uttered the forged deed to be true, knowing it wasn't true. And Mary Kay Holtis let him get away with this. So they have all these attorneys that have clear evidence because Shumway Van's litigating the real estate agent and Bobby. So they know exactly what's happened. They've gotten the letter from the expert. They know about the notary fraud, but that doesn't stop anybody because I've already reported it to the state bar. And at this point, I've now reported it to the attorney general. I've reported it to Governor Sisolak. I've reported it to all kinds of senators in Congress, all the news stations. I'm telling everybody what has happened. The Judicial Commission knows, and I'm just waiting for somebody. This is clear as day to come out. And it's like crickets. There's absolutely nobody willing to do the right thing. And at the same time, I'm looking for a lawyer because I'm not a lawyer. And I had lawyers that screwed me. So when I went to the state bar, they should have gave me new lawyers. They refused. Mary Kay Holtis should have threw out the cases and assigned me lawyers. And they refused to do this. So I'm calling all over Las Vegas because it has to be a Las Vegas lawyer. And I'm telling them, I have a letter from an expert, I have all this proof, and each one of them is like, oh, there's nothing else we can do. We have a conflict of interest. So now there's this unanimous thing to not represent me. So I'm like, well, if they're not going to represent me, I'm not going to let all these people get away with what they're doing. So I have filed my case. I'm waiting for November 17th to come, so then I can enforce the notary bonds, and each bond is supposed to be $10,000. So I'm like, okay, great. Maybe if I can put that with my savings, I can get a lawyer that's not afraid of these people. So I file for that. The court date comes up, and I get an email that it's canceled, and it's now moved to February. So at the time, this is during the election for new judges. Raina Hughes loses her seat, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. So now there's going to be a new judge that comes in, and she's going to hear this evidence. So now at that point, Kathy Hardcastle had already been on the case, Raina Hughes, and now once the election is over, there's going to be a new judge. So my new court date for enforcing the notary bonds moves to February. And in the meantime, they're all filing motions to dismiss. They have no evidence. The motions are like 1 page long. And then Bobby Antee and Linda Naw's lawyer, Garrett Chase, they begin filing joint motions for Bobby and Linda. So I know now the corruption is getting worse, and they're not even hiding it anymore. And there comes my court date for enforcement of the notary bonds. Well, Judge Rob Baer isn't on the case anymore. So at that point, I've told the Attorney General, he's ignored me. So I filed judicial review. And then I've told the Secretary of State, and she's ignoring me. So I file another judicial review. And then the second judicial review was on the state bar. So when I reported my attorneys what they did, the conspiracy with Bobby's attorneys to the state bar refused to do anything. So the state bar, I filed judicial review, and it goes to another judge, and they immediately dismiss it. There's no hearing. I put a summary judgment. I do my briefing. There's no hearing. They just dismiss it. And the same thing with the Attorney General. It goes to Jim Crockett. He asks for briefings. I give him all the evidence of the notary fraud, of Raina Hughes fabricating a ruling, of me not getting due process, of the crimes on my property. He dismisses the claim. So I appeal both of them. Each appeal, I have to pay $250 plus $500. So now I've filed an appeal in the divorce case, in the notary case, in both judicial review cases. All my appeals are ignored every single time. I file the appeal, I turn in my docket statements, I make 3 copies, everything's done by paper. So I do all this, and I hear nothing. So I start filing emergency motions into each appeal. And each motion, I file the letter from the expert, the proof of the notary fraud, the contradicting stories, the legal malpractice, the judicial corruption, and every single motion is ignored or denied. So at this point, they've never heard anything in quiet title, and they haven't heard anything in the judicial review. They just dismissed them. And I also filed a legal malpractice case. So on the legal malpractice case, I put my attorneys, I put Bobby's attorneys, Shumway Van, and also Linda's attorneys, and then I put the state bar, because now I had civil claims against them, and I looked for an attorney to do legal malpractice. It's clear as day. Well, no attorney would help me, and they have a statute of limitations. So if you don't do it in time, they get away with what they've done. So I filed it myself. Well, when I filed the legal malpractice, they dismissed Shumway Van. Shumway Van continues to represent Linda Naw and Bobby Antee still. They dismissed the state bar and say they have immunity. And then they send it to arbitration. So even though I filed that legal malpractice case exempt from arbitration because my claims are over $50,000, they just sent it to arbitration illegally, and then they got an arbitrator on there. So at this point, I realized none of these people are going to follow the law. And now I got Mary Kay Holtis, Raina Hughes, Elizabeth Gonzalez, Rob Baer, Jim Crockett, Mark Denton, and Trevor Atkins, all breaking the law. And I've appealed this and reported this to Christina Pickering in the Supreme Court, and she denies everything that I filed, even though I've given her all the evidence. So at this point, I go back to the books and I study some more, and I learn about a Title 42 civil rights violation. So I said, well, this is exactly what they're doing to me. They're depriving me of due process. They're depriving me of justice, restitution, protection. And so I'm gonna go back 1 second. When I found out all of this was happening with Raina Hughes, I went to the courts and filed for a protection order. And I gave them all the evidence they took out, all the evidence of what they had done. And another judge, Amy something, I can't remember her name at the moment, she denies it, completely denies it, and then sends all of them information that I filed it. So now I realize there's multiple people involved in this. And I file a Title 42 civil rights violation. And I tell them they're trying to force the sale of my house. They're trying to deprive me of justice in my property. And now they're illegally awarding legal fees to each lawyer. And as a victim of a crime, I'm protected from compensating anybody who's victimized me. So I filed Title 42, and I then mail that lawsuit, once it's filed, to every news station in Nevada. So Channel 13, Channel 8, Channel 5, Channel 3, they've been following this story for 3 years. I've tagged them in everything. Every time I went to the police department, every time I went to file a complaint with Secretary of State or Galvar, I was tagging the news stations all the time. So many people in the city of Nevada and in the city of Las Vegas knew about all of this. So I sent out this complaint, and not one person even responded to it. Not one person would cover the corruption that I reported. So I get my paperwork, and I find out I have Judge Gloria Navarro. So Gloria Navarro is a U.S. District Court judge. And I look her up because now I've just seen the corruption of multiple judges. And I'm praying this is different. You know, they can't get all the way up to the U.S. district level and it'd be corrupt. So I look up Gloria Navarro, and I realized that she just had a civil rights violation case for Raina Hughes last year. When Raina Hughes threatened to jail a child, it was the civil wealthy case. And I said, well, that's a conflict of interest. If you've already heard a civil rights case for Raina Hughes, you should switch this to another judge. So the first motion I filed into the federal case was to ask her to respectfully recuse herself and give me a judge that didn't already have any interactions with Raina Hughes. And they refused. So I then filed emergency motions, because the purpose of the civil rights violations is if you are victorious in your claims, all the orders from the district court judges and the family court judges are reversed. So I'm like, this is great. I'm going to get a new judge. She has to be honest, and she's going to reverse everything that these people have done, and I'm going to get an annulment and be able to move on with my life. Well, unfortunately, I filed maybe 7 or 8 emergency motions into this federal case, and not one of them has been heard. And it was filed in October of 2020, I believe. So not one motion has been heard in the federal case. And on that case, I added every single one of those judges, the police department, the Attorney General Aaron Ford, and the law firms. So therefore, once I filed that lawsuit and I served all of them, and I did, they all got served, they could no longer be over the rest of the cases. So they were all taken off of the cases, and they were given to new judges. So then my divorce case went from the election happened and Raina Hughes lost her seat. So now I'm like, well, great. She lost her seat. We're going to get a new judge in there. It's a simple case of what they did, and I'll get justice. Well, the new judge comes in and she recuses herself. And then they pick another judge. And this judge is Don Thorne. So Don Thorne gets the case and immediately starts dismissing everything. And then awards Bobby's attorneys attorney fees, and they all proceed to try to continue to get me out of the house. So the Supreme Court has my appeals, and I've given them all this evidence, but they're doing nothing. So I'm also filing emergency motions with the Supreme Court, and they keep sending me back denials. So they took Christina Pickering off of the cases because now she was on my civil rights lawsuit, and they now give it to 3 other Nevada Supreme Court judges. I think Herndon and Stiglitz, I can't remember their names at the time. But every appeal went to those 3 Supreme Court judges. So they were seeing exactly what was happening. But everything I filed, they denied. And then after they realized that I was taking pictures of the stamps that were proving that I was filing it, they stopped sending me my motions back stamped. And then they just stopped filing them. So I sent motion after motion telling them about the abuse from Shumway Van and Grayson Moulton, and showing them that Garrett Chasen was representing Bobby and Linda, and that Linda perjured herself on the stand by saying that they weren't. So I'm giving them all this information, but it doesn't matter what I give them or what I file. Everything is denied and everything is ignored. And then it's immediately dismissed. So I go to federal court and they're doing the same thing. He hears nothing. And now the Attorney General and the DA are filing motions on the behalf of all of these judges. So now, not only are they getting paid to manipulate the law through our tax dollars, they're now getting free representation with our tax dollars to protect them from the crimes that they've committed. And the Attorney General, who is also named on the complaint, who is defending other defendants on the complaint, that's legal malpractice. You can't do that. And the Attorney General doesn't have immunity to violate anybody's civil rights. But I continue with my motions and I continue trying to follow the process, and I start reading these motions that they are writing back. Again, 2 pages, 1 pages. They're putting no effort into this. So that tells me that I got another dishonest judge. But I read these motions, and I think I did a video after reading the first motion from the Attorney General, where he then says, because I've given him now 3 complaints. He ignores them all, tries to blow me off and tell me go back to the mortgage division. It's his jurisdiction. And I'm telling him I already went there. He's not doing anything. So he then writes a motion that says, Lindsay can't say she can't self-certify that she's a victim of a crime. There's no crime being committed here, and she's entitled to nothing. And my heart broke at that point. And I was so upset. Because now we have this Attorney General who happens to be a black man, who is now condoning the attacks from everybody against me to protect these companies: ERA Brokers, National Title Company, Valley West Mortgage, and One Realty Group. After I've now spent months reporting all of this to him, before Rainey Hughes put in her order, before all of these judges put in their fake order, I reported everything to him. And to read this motion and see that he didn't care about me at all. And not only did he not care about me, he didn't care about my work, he didn't care about my loss, and he didn't care about our community. So after going back and forth, motion after motion with the federal case, where there was never a hearing, there was never anything. They never responded to anything except for a couple denials of motions. But again, I never got a hearing. I never got to have my right to be heard. And I had very clear evidence. But the agenda was to protect each other. So now that case is still open. The judge refuses to hear anything. Gloria Navarro and Cam Fehrenbach are on this case. And they just paused the whole thing while they continue to litigate all the rest of these cases. And I'm not invited to any of the hearings. And they never let me come into the court because they don't want any of them recorded. And any recordings that I know are there, they say they are now sealed cases and I can have no access to them. So at that point, I'm like, this is ridiculous. They're doing the exact same thing again. And now the Supreme Court starts closing my appeals. Even though I'm following the process, I'm turning in everything on time, I have to go print these papers, and not just print them. I have to make 3 or 4 copies. So you guys saw videos of me doing that too. So now they just refuse to take anything and then start closing out the cases, saying that I didn't turn in things on time. I didn't do something properly. Not one of these cases should ever have made it to an appeal. They should have been handled. When I reported this in 2018 to Las Vegas Police Department, if the police department would have did an investigation and requested the loan docs, they would have saw there was notary fraud. But the agenda was that we protect the companies and we don't care about this one woman. No matter what she does or what she's been through, we don't care. And that's the part that angers me is Nikki Bott committed a clear crime. And I don't see why I don't deserve justice for what she's done to me. Because if I would have done it to her, I would have been in jail 4 years ago. So now with the quiet title case, I then filed the motion again because they never heard anything. So when Judge Rob Baer, he never heard anything. He, after the election, switched it to David Jones. So Judge David Jones came in there and just started dismissing everything, denied my order. There was no hearing. There was not even a phone hearing. There was nothing. He ruled everything in chambers and looked on paperwork. So obviously he didn't look at any paperwork. He just ruled in the favor of everybody else. So I say, this is ridiculous, and I file my motion again to enforce the notary bonds. And then I file a motion to quiet the title. So I post the summons on the door of the home. I notify the unknown heirs. I file another lease pendants because now it's a different case number. So I'm ready to go to court and get my day. Well, Judge David Jones again, chambers, ruling in chambers, denied. And now we're sanctioning you for asking for the same motion again. So now this was a clear sign to me that if I continue to file into these cases and ask for justice, I'm going to keep getting fined. And how I'm going to stop them from fining me and enforcing these judgments when I can't even make them follow the law of what they're doing now. And even though I've been telling the whole world about what they've been doing, nobody's stopping them. And it's just gotten worse. So the problem isn't just in Nevada. The problem is with the FBI, with the IRS, with all these places that are supposed to be monitoring these people, the Department of Justice. Nobody does anything. And the news stations, they'll refuse to report it. So it leaves you in a place where you have no idea what to do. So I start pleading social media to get help. And at that point, they start having people come sit outside my office and having people sit outside my house, trying to order me to come into their psychiatrist, like all kinds of crazy things. So at that point, God told me it's time to go. So I packed up my car in one day and me and my mom just drove because I knew in the state of Nevada, I was no longer safe. And now I have caught the misconduct of not just district court judges, now the federal court judges are doing the same thing. So now that I've gotten to this point, I leave Nevada and they continue to file motion after motion into these cases. But now the motions are label her vexuous because she won't just give up and she's wasting everybody's time. She has no evidence. So it didn't matter what I filed. The response was, there is no evidence. And then the judge says, denied. So now I knew that it's over 15 judges in the state of Nevada committing misconduct. So I then file another civil rights violation. And this one goes to federal court in Reno, to Miranda Dew. And this one, I name everybody, all the Supreme Court justices. So there's now 4 Supreme Court judges, 2 U.S. District Court judges, and about, I think, 9 district court judges. So it's a whole plethora of them, plus the police department, plus the attorney general. And now I've served them multiple times in each case. And I've done it right. I followed the process and the law. And they simply dismissed them, refused my due process, refused my right to be heard, refused my right to a trial, refused my right to an attorney. And now I'm saying all of these judges are lying. And I'm praying now that Miranda Dew is an honest judge and she'll help me. And I then file the complaint with her. And I asked her, because the law says I can ask to serve them alternative modes. So since I've already served 5 cases and each service is like $30 and I have like 20, 30 people on each lawsuit, it gets pricey. So I filed a motion, and I did this because I would know if she's honest. And I filed a motion for permission to serve via email. So I was putting Aaron Ford on the lawsuit, and Aaron Ford is the Attorney General who's in charge of crimes on property. He's in charge of judges and their misconduct, and he's in charge of government workers and their misconduct. So him not acting and refusing to help me was him knowingly violating my federal constitutional rights under the color of law, and he doesn't have immunity for that. So I file this new lawsuit, and I ask her, can I serve him via email, because it is his responsibility to serve everybody else. And so far, he has protected everybody. He hasn't done his job. So I gave her all this evidence in the motion. So she then, the very next day, responds back and says, denied. You cannot serve him any other way. So now that they've already made it to where I'm not safe in Nevada, I'm being stalked. They're making fake pages and bashing me and my work, harassing my supporters. I've had to leave to protect myself. Now she wants me to come back into their jurisdiction to serve him when I've already done this multiple times. So I knew at that point she was not going to be honest, and she was not going to help me. So at that, I didn't even serve him. I didn't even serve the complaints because I knew it was going to get me absolutely nowhere. So this is what I've been going through for 4 years. And the last year, it's just been a nightmare of being forced to represent myself as a victim of a crime. They're withholding everything that belongs to me, and I'm the victim of the crime. And the person who violated me is the person that has complete control over whether I can annul this, whether I can move on with my life and remarry, whether I can seek any type of fertility treatment, because they refuse to divorce me. So the divorce trial was over 1.5 years ago. And still today, I have no decree of divorce. I have no response from the Supreme Court about fixing anything or addressing any of the misconduct. The Judicial Commission completely shut out every complaint I reported to them. And then one of the judges that dismissed the legal malpractice, he was on the Judicial Commission. So it was a conflict of interest for him to even take the legal malpractice case. But again, he simply dismissed everything that I told him in the Judicial Commission, and nobody's being held accountable for what's been done to me. So I'm hoping that sharing this story and sharing what I've gone through encourages somebody to stand up and say, this isn't right. This isn't fair. And the law should apply to everybody equally. And if they had the audacity to put me through what I've gone through and believe they wouldn't get caught, then they should all be ready to pay the price for the crimes they've committed. Because in our society, we all are held accountable for the crimes that we commit. But it seems to me that if you're a judge, a lawyer, or a government worker, you can weasel your way around it. So the laws apply to us, but not to them. So I'm asking you guys all, sorry. I'm asking you guys all to stand with me, to look at the evidence that I've shown. Go on to Facebook at This Mama Fights, or you can go onto my YouTube channel at Lindsay Licari Life After Loss, and look at the evidence. It's very clear. This notary should be arrested, and the only reason she's not being arrested is because she has committed a crime against a Black woman, and I don't matter. It doesn't matter how much I've given back to my community. It doesn't matter that I have no track record of lying or stealing from anybody. But yet, Aaron Ford does. He has a criminal record. Raina Hughes has a pattern of doing this. And if we don't come together as a community and say we want change, we want reform, we want our kids to stop being stole by the court systems, we want our husbands to stop being jailed for no reason, and we want equality. And that's what this is about. I absolutely do not want to do this. I do not want to fight. But every time I've tried to walk away from this and simply give it to God, God has told me that no, there is a bigger purpose. There is a bigger reason why he wants me to do this. And I don't know how this is going to end or ever end, or when I'll ever get my name back, or when I can ever just go buy my own house, because I've worked so hard and I have my own dreams. But because of the corruption in the Nevada court systems and in the Nevada Police Department and the Nevada Attorney General's office and the county recorder and the Secretary of State, I have been the prisoner. A prisoner in that house, a prisoner in this situation. And I want to be free. I want to heal. So that's why I wanted to share the story. And my son, his birthday is coming. And he should have been 7. And for 4 years, I've done nothing but fight and work and fight. And there hasn't even been a moment that I've been able to sit down and even begin to grieve the loss of my son. And his birthday is coming on August 20th, and he would have been 7. So my promise to him this year was to keep living and not keep living the way that I've been forced to live the last 4 years. So I pray that you guys all take a stand with me. And what I need is just a signature on the change.org. And I already have almost 4,000 signatures. At 10,000 signatures, Congress will have to look at this petition. So I'm begging you guys all. It doesn't cost you anything. It takes one moment to just stand up and say, this isn't right. This isn't right. And this woman deserves peace. And Nikki Bott, Bobby Antee, and Linda Naw deserve to do the time for the crimes that they committed. So please join me in sharing this video and signing the petition and helping me get justice.